Alrighty guys, we're going to go over some parallel and perpendicular slopes today. This is 5.4 notes. So we're going to be able to find parallel and perpendicular slopes from equations, from 2 points, from tables, and from graphs. So you, I hope, know by this point that if two lines are parallel, which some of you have a hard time spelling, but the symbol is just, it kind of looks like an 11. You can use the math symbol. They have the exact same slope if they're parallel. If two lines are perpendicular, and again, there's a symbol for that. It looks like an upside down capital T. Then they have, these are some weird words, not negative, but negative reciprocal slopes. That just means that the fraction is flipped over. That's what reciprocal means, and it has the opposite sign because it's negative. So from an equation, this is in the form y equals mx plus b. So the only reason that I even have this equation is so that I can see, hey, my slope is 2. So if I'm looking at a line that's parallel to this line, then since we know parallel lines have the same slope, then the slope of this parallel equation would be 2. If I asked about the perpendicular slope, so remember, it's the opposite sign, so I know it's going to be negative since this one is positive. And be careful about these whole numbers because it feels like it should be -2. There's always that understood 1 under there that we're not going to write. And you can see now when you flip that over to find the reciprocal, it's 1/2. So the perpendicular line would have a slope of -1/2. All right, next type, if they give me 2 ordered pairs and ask me to find the slope. So you know we're looking at -4, 9, and 0, 5. And from 9 to 5, that's a change of down 4. And from -4 to 0, that's a change of up 4. So the slope would be -4, the change in the y's, over the change in the x's, which reduces to just -1. Okay, so when it asks for my slope of the line that passes through these 2 points is -1. If I asked you for the slope of the line that was parallel to that, if this one has a slope of -1, the parallel line would also have a slope of -1. The perpendicular, remembering still that it has that understood 1 under it, but 1/1 is still just 1. You can put the understood 1 under it if you want to. You don't have to. This one was negative, so this one has to be positive. So there it is from 2 points. From a table, it's really no different. It's just already in the table like this. So from -4 to -2, that's up 2. You can see this change is going up 2. From 0 to 4, that's a change of 4. From 4 to 8 is a change of 4. So my slope is the change in the y's over the change in the x's. So 2/4. Which you would probably reduce to 1/2. So the parallel, exact same, 1/2. The perpendicular, flip it over, so now it's 2/1. If it was positive, now it's negative. You could also write this as just -2. You don't have to write the 1 underneath. All right, one more, this time from a graph. So when you look at this line, you can see as you go from left to right that the line is going downward. So you know that the slope is going to be negative. And just find a couple of points that you can tell. Like from here, it looks like a point is right here. So maybe down 1/1, 2, 3. Looks like every time it goes down 1, it goes over 3. And let's just double check that. 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3. Yes. Okay, so this one has a slope of -1/3. So if it's parallel, then the slope is exactly the same, -1/3. If it's perpendicular, flip this over, so it becomes 3/1. It was already negative, so now if it's perpendicular, it has the opposite sign, which is positive, or you could just call that positive 3. All right, turn that paper over. And this time, write and graph the equation of the line that is parallel to this with a y-intercept of 4. Okay, so the only reason they give me a line that's parallel to my line is because parallel lines have the same slope. So you should be able to tell by looking that this line has a slope of 2 because it's in the y equals mx plus b form. So I know if my line is parallel, it has a slope of 2. This minus 3 has nothing to do with my line. It's just the line that my line's parallel to. My line has a y-intercept of 4. That's where the 4 goes. That's the y-intercept. That's the b value. So if your y-intercept is 4, then here's your equation. Y equals 2x plus 4. Okay, so there's my equation. They also asked me to graph it, so I'm going to start right here with the y-intercept of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to make a dot on the y-axis. And then my slope is positive 2 over 1. So every time it goes up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And I forgot my ruler again, so here's my trusty tablet to draw this line through these points. And there we have it. All right, example 2. Write and graph the equation of the line that's perpendicular to this and has a y-intercept of 0, negative 1. This is my b value. That's my y-intercept for my equation. My slope is perpendicular to this one. So if this one has a slope of negative 2 over 3, then my perpendicular slope will be 3 over 2. And this one was negative, so my slope is positive. So I have my b value and my m value. My equation is 3 over 2x, and it's a negative 1, so I'm just going to say minus 1. If you prefer to write it as plus negative 1, that's the same thing. All right, and now let's graph it. The y-intercept at negative 1 is here. The slope is up 3 over 2, so up 3 over 2, up 3 over 2, and just draw a nice straight line using a ruler or a handy notebook, whichever you have, some sort of straight edge. Okay, last part. This time, determine whether the equations are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So you have two sets of lines to compare. This one has a slope of negative 2. This one also has a slope of negative 2. Those are exactly the same. These two are parallel. This time, this one has a slope of positive 2. This one has a slope of negative 2. A lot of people will get tricked by this one and say that they're perpendicular, but if they were perpendicular, this 2 over 1 would turn into negative 1 over 2, not negative 2, because this 1 would flip to the top. So they're not perpendicular, and they're not exactly the same, so they're not parallel. They're neither perpendicular or parallel. Okay, so this time, negative 1 over 2 for a slope, and this one is the negative 2 over 1. So they have flipped them correctly, 1 over 2, 2 over 1, but since they're both negative, that is the only thing stopping them from being perpendicular. Really looks like they're perpendicular, but because they both have the same sign, they are not. So this one is also neither. Down here, positive 1 over 2, negative 2 over 1. Finally, this one is perpendicular. Look, this flips to that. This one was positive, this one is negative. Those are perpendicular. And the last one. No numbers in front of the x means we've got the understood 1 and the understood 1. This one has a slope of negative 1 over 1. This one has a slope of positive 1 over 1. You can see if you flipped it, it would still be the same. So they are reciprocals. One is negative and one is positive. These are also perpendicular. All right, I believe you are ready to get cracking.